So, we all know Jane Eyre, right? That classic Gothic romance. But what if I told you it's something more? What if it's actually a map of a single complex mind? That's what we're doing in this explainer. We're putting Jane on the analyst's couch to figure out the psychological war that's raging just beneath the surface of this entire story.
Okay, so let's just dive right in with a pretty wild idea. What if all those famous characters in Jane Eyre aren't actually real people? I'm talking about the brooding Mr. Rochester, the terrifying Bertha Mason, even the super strict St. John Rivers. What if they're not just people she meets, but are actually pieces of her own mind, projections of her own internal battles? You know, once you start thinking that way, this one question really becomes the key to unlocking the entire novel.
And once you have that question in your head, the whole story just completely transforms. It stops being just a spooky romance and becomes, well, a map, a symbolic map of Jane's own psyche. Suddenly, every event, every single character, every place she goes, it all starts to look like a part of her own mind fighting for control, trying to find balance, and in the end, trying to become whole. All right, so to read this map, we're going to need a key. And for this, we're busting out a classic, Sigmund Freud's model of the psyche. We're going to look at the main characters as three warring factions inside Jane's mind: the id, the ego, and the superego. First up, the id. So the id is that raw, primal, instinctual part of us, right? It's all about passion, rage, desire, with zero thought for the consequences. And in this novel, the id isn't just a concept, it has a name: Bertha Mason. She's the one locked away in the attic, and she is literally everything a proper Victorian lady like Jane is forced to push down and repress. I mean, just think about it. When Jane is quietly fuming, absolutely furious with Rochester, who's the one that actually acts on that rage? It's Bertha. She's the one who tries to burn him alive in his bed. She is Jane's anger, just made flesh. Then on the total opposite side, you've got the superego. This is that little voice in your head, your inner critic. It's all about society's rules, duty, and a whole lot of guilt. It's super rigid, kind of punishing, and it basically denies anything that feels good. And who is this in the book? Well, meet St. John Rivers. This guy is the walking, talking embodiment of cold, hard repression. He literally asks Jane to marry him not because he loves her, but for duty. He wants her to completely sacrifice her true self for some higher cause. He basically represents a kind of living death, a complete shutdown of all passion and feeling. So who's stuck in the middle of these two extremes? That's the ego, the rational part of us that's always trying to play mediator. And this, of course, is Jane Eyre herself. Her entire story is this massive struggle to navigate a path between the fire of the id and the ice of the superego. And here's the real kicker. She gets it. She understands that if she gives in to pure passion like Bertha, it leads to self-destruction and madness. But if she gives in to pure, cold duty like St. John wants, that's just a loveless, empty life. Her real victory isn't just getting married, it's figuring out how to be a complete person, someone who can have both passion and principles. So where did this whole internal war even start? To figure that out, we have to go all the way back to Jane's childhood. Specifically, to one single event that was a massive psychological trauma for her: being locked in the Red Room. Now, this place is so much more than just a spooky room. It's like a pressure cooker for her subconscious mind. That color, red, it's pretty obvious, right? It symbolizes her trapped volcanic anger at the people mistreating her, and her fear of her uncle's ghost. That points to this deep, deep fear of patriarchal authority, a theme that, you'll notice, follows her for her entire life. And when she faints, that's not just some delicate fit. It's a textbook defense mechanism. It's called dissociation. It's when your mind literally just checks out because the emotional pain is just too much to deal with. And it's not just big, traumatic events. Jane's subconscious is constantly trying to talk to her, sending her messages through symbols, dreams, and these really weird moments with mirrors. These are like little secret notes from the deepest part of her mind, trying to tell her what she's really afraid of and what she actually needs. To really get this, there's a cool concept from another psychoanalyst, Jacques Lacan, called the mirror stage. Now, this is supposed to be that moment in a baby's life when it looks in a mirror and for the very first time recognizes itself. It's like, oh, hey, that's me. It's the birth of your sense of self. But for poor Jane, this moment just keeps getting fractured. Think back to that scene in the Red Room. Jane looks in the mirror and she doesn't see herself. She sees this strange little figure, something that's half fairy, half imp. She calls herself a discord. She feels totally alienated from her own reflection because everyone has taught her that her real feelings, her anger, her spirit, are ugly and wrong. So when she looks in the mirror, there's no whole self for her to even recognize.
And then there's this other really powerful message her subconscious keeps sending her. It's a recurring nightmare. Right before things are about to get really intense, especially with Rochester, she has this dream that she's holding a crying baby, a baby that she just can't seem to comfort no matter what she does. So, what's with this phantom baby? Well, it's her own inner child. It's a symbol of all her vulnerability, all her unmet needs from being an orphan, and that deep, deep fear of being abandoned. Her subconscious is basically screaming a warning at her. Hey, you can't be an equal partner with Rochester until you learn how to take care of this vulnerable part of yourself first.
Okay, and then we get this incredibly violent image. The night after Rochester proposes, a huge lightning bolt just splits the big chestnut tree at Thornfield right down the middle. This tree was supposed to be a symbol of their new love. Now, this is one of the most famous bits of foreshadowing in all of literature, but what's going on here psychologically?
Well, it ties directly into another psychoanalytic idea called the castration complex. And, whoa, hold on. In literary analysis, we're not talking about anything literal here. It refers to a symbolic act. It's about weakening a character who has way too much power, especially a really dominant, almost father-like figure.
That split tree? It's a direct prophecy for what's about to happen to Rochester. See, at that point in the story, he's just too powerful. He's the master, a kind of father figure, and Jane can't really be his equal. So, he has to be brought down a peg. The fire that blinds him and injures him, that's the symbolic castration. It strips away his arrogance, it makes him need her, and it finally levels the playing field so she can come back to him as a true partner, not as his employee.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together. After all this internal chaos, the trauma, the nightmares, that constant battle between her instincts and her sense of duty, we finally get to the end of Jane's journey. And now we can see it for what it really is, her ultimate psychological triumph.
So just to quickly recap the psychological map we've been following, you've got Bertha Mason as the id, all that wild passion. You've got St. John Rivers as the superego, all that cold morality. The Red Room is ground zero for her trauma. That crying baby is her own inner child begging for safety. And the split tree is the sign that overwhelming male power has to be broken. Every single one of these is a crucial piece of Jane's internal puzzle.
And all of this brings us to what might be the real conclusion of the novel. The happy ending isn't just that she marries the guy. The real victory is that Jane finally becomes a whole, integrated person. Think about it. The id, Bertha, is dead. The superego, St. John, has been rejected. Jane, the ego, is finally in the driver's seat. She can love with passion, but without completely losing herself in the process. That is her real triumph.
Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. How many of our other great stories aren't really about external fights, but internal ones? I mean, think about Frankenstein or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Are their monsters actually villains, or are they just the parts of ourselves that we're too terrified to look at? It's a way of reading that, once you start using it, might just change how you see stories forever.